Good morning. So, today we're going to talk about the Articles of Confederation, okay, and its successes. So, let me put something in context for everybody, okay? American Revolution, colonies hate the king. The Second Continental Congress calls upon states to draft their own constitutions after independence. Charters are no longer valid. So, those are what the king issued, called the charters to people who came to the colonies. The constitutions deliberately create a weak executive and judicial branch. This is where the Brits abused power, so they were a little gun shy on the judicial and executive branches. The legislative branches were giving sweeping powers, or Congress. Okay? The Articles of Confederation, it was the first national government. It was finished in 1777 and it was ratified by the colonies in 1781. New York and Virginia cede land claims to the national government. That means they had claims other places. They let the government have those claims. So let's talk about the successes of the Articles of Confederation. Okay, landowners of 1785 divided up land in the West, okay, which is here. Use sales to pay off national debt. So they sold these lands and they paid off their national debt and they bound the states, so the colonies, together. The Northwest Ordinance was to set requirements for admissions as a state. States had to have 60,000 inhabitants equal to state. Slavery was forbidden in any way, shape, or form. Let's talk, and this is a land ordinance of 1785. Okay. It had grids, examples. This is like, so right here it says slavery. There shall be neither slavery nor involuntary servitude in the said territory. So here's the Northwest Territory. It's Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Upper and Lower Peninsula, Minnesota. All right, let's talk about the failures of the Articles of Confederation. Each state retains its sovereignty. That means voting, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right, which is not only this Confederation expressly delegated to the United States and Congress assembled. So, failure. There's no executive branch in the Articles of Confederation. There's no president. There's no central figure. Everything that the Articles tried to pass required a 9 out of 13 votes of the 13 states. Each state only had one vote, similar to the Senate. A unanimous vote required for amendments. That means 13 out of 13 were required for amendments. Couldn't regulate commerce or enforce a tax collection. So there was no federal tax. And we have a situation called Shays' Rebellion, which it was powerless to stop because they had no military. Each state had its own militia. Okay, here were the challenges of the Articles of Confederation. Between 1750 and 1775, the mainland colonial population more than doubled from 1.2 mil to 2.5 mil, triggering westward migrations and legal battles over land, which had become increasingly valuable. Violence broke out in eastern areas where tenant farmers and small holders contested landlords' property claims based on ancient titles, and in the backcountry where migrating settlers fought with Indians, rival claimants, and the officials of eastern-dominated governments. Okay, that's kind of the start of Shays' Rebellion right there. So, at the Constitutional Convention, there was some compromising. Let's get some context. Philly in 1787 had 55 delegates from 12 states. Rhode Island did not come. The goals were to revise the Articles of Confederation, and then we're going to talk about compromise. Okay? So this is the idea that they have, the three branches of government, one U.S. government, compromises. Okay, legislative branch is the Congress. Congress is split into two houses, the Senate and the House of Reps. Executive has the President and the VP, and the judicial has the Supreme Court. So, Alexander Hamilton said, "The voice of the people has been said to be the voice of God, but it is not true in fact. The people are turbulent and changing. They seldom judge or determine correctly or right. Can a democratic assembly who annually revolve in the mass of the people be supposedly steadily to pursue the public good? Nothing but a permanent body can check the imprudence of democracy." So, here we have, we're coming up on the campaign and the election tomorrow. Here is 2016 Electoral College map, okay? And the electoral votes that are assigned to them. California is the most at 55, and our state has 4, but our state is unique because lots of times it's been split, 2 to the blue and 2 to the red, like the last election. So, let's talk about compromises. The Great Compromise: equal representation in the Senate, proportional in the House. Let me go back one. No, back. Let's talk about this graph right here, okay? The Great Compromise: equal representation in the Senate. That means we have 2 from each state. Okay, proportional in the House. That means depending on your population of the state that you live in, you were assigned that many representatives. Okay, and they're both part of the legislative branch. 3/5 counting for slaves for representation. So we had the 3/5 compromise where a slave was 3/5 of a person. So the southern states were upset because they have tons of slaves. Okay, how they're going to vote. So they, and the northern, or the northern states wanted them to count as a full person. Well, they came up with a compromise. It's 3/5 compromise, counting slaves for representation. It gave the South more power. Virginia and Pennsylvania had similar free populations. Compromise allowed Virginia to have 6 more seats in the House of Representatives. Okay? Excuse me, what did I say? 3/5 the vote? That's wrong. It was when they're counting populations to gauge how many representatives a state gets in the House of Reps. Slaves were not allowed to vote. Okay, my apologies. For 32 of our first 36 years of the country, the president was from slaveholding Virginia and a slave owner himself. Okay, so 32 of our first 36 years as a country, the president was from a slave state and was a slave owner himself. Okay? Oh, let me go back again. Shoot. Back to here. Okay, Electoral College. Electoral College. Hot topic. Hot topic. Why? Okay, why? Because we're going to learn about the Electoral College creates a buffer or a layer between the people and the executive branch. Problems with popular vote. Founders believe public was too decentralized and provincial. Equals impossible for anyone to win a majority vote. Had no knowledge that political parties would take hold. Hamilton also worried about the excess of democracy. Problems with allowing Congress to elect a president violated the separation of powers. Okay, president should be independent of Congress. A direct election would favor Northerners at the time over Southerners. Electoral College allowed the South to retain power of 3/5 compromise, because remember, we're going on Electoral College goes on population. Okay, representation. Questions left unanswered. Who should the electors be? How many would they be appointed? Could they be limited in their choice or bound in any way? Questions were left to state legislatures to resolve. Therefore, early delegates to Electoral College were elected by state legislatures. Remember that. So on Tuesday night, okay, when we have a presidential election, they're talking about electoral votes and Electoral College, the state legislatures elect, okay, the electors who cast their vote. So what this means is, if you've ever seen a map, you heard me talk about this in class, that they didn't want one region or one area of the country with the popular vote for the president to dominate year after year after year after year. Because if that was the case, okay, Orange County in Southern California has a larger or is equal to population for 23 states, including the one you reside in. Okay, Los Angeles County in California has the same population as 23 states that is today. So in other words, an area like that county could have a massive impact every single time we elect a president if it's under the popular vote. The United States is made up of many different cultures, ideals, and such. So every year, it didn't matter if how many people voted in Maine if it was popular vote, because the majority of people live in California. That's why they have 55 electoral votes. In this system, it's decentralized. Okay, it's spread out. So rural states, smaller states, have more of a chance to have a say in the presidential election. Besides the fact that the executive branch was not to be more powerful than Congress or the judicial branch, separation of powers. Okay? So, the fundamental principles, okay, of the government. Whoa. Fundamental principles of the government. Okay, ambition must be counteract to ambition. It may be a reflection on human nature that such devices should be necessary to control the abuses of government. But what is government itself but the greatest of all reflections on human nature? If men were angels, no government would be necessary. This is true. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, it is greatly difficult. The great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place obliged to control itself. So we have what we call the checks and balances, where one branch is not more powerful than the other. There's checks. So we have a strong central government. We have a separation of powers, okay? Checks and balances, which are outlined in this. We the people, not we the states. Ratified by the people in special conventions. Conservatives were distrustful of the democracy. As ratified, people can only elect half or 1/3 of the government. Senate elected by state legislatures. President by electoral college. Supreme Court is selected by the president. Okay? These were the problems that arose. But the whole point of the three branches is to have checks and balances so that one branch is not more powerful than the other. So this is who ratified. Okay? Take a look at this. Just digest it. Ratified the federal Constitution in 1787 to 1790. Okay. So, the ratification debate, anti-federalist attacks. It's missing a Bill of Rights. Oh, it's First Amendment, First Bill of Rights. Okay. Counter-revolutionary, creates a strong central government, takes power from the states. Anti-federalists, okay, didn't like these two things. Had Federalist support, James Madison and Alexander Hamilton. Protection of liberty through checks and balances, and it had separation of powers. Federalist essay persuade New York to ratify, also with a promise of a Bill of Rights thrown in there. Okay, remember, in the original document, there were no Bill of Rights. Anti-Federalists wants a Bill of Rights. Otherwise, they're not going to ratify it, so they came to a compromise. So, Federalist essays published 4 essays a week for 5 months, read as widely in the South as they were in the North. Federalist essays, 291 references to these essays in Supreme Court majority opinions. Trend is increasing. So, that is how it got ratified. The government is because we had the anti-federalists who were asking for a Bill of Rights, and they wanted a strong central government, one that took power from. They didn't want one that took power from the states. They thought the states, so they came up with a compromise of the Bill of Rights. States had certain powers, okay, and the central government had certain powers. But I'm including these notes in there so you can take a look at them and read them.